You're listening to Dead Air Podcast, part of splatterpictures.net.
What's up, everybody? Wes, Dead Air Night here with always.
Typical Lydia.
Today's show, we're going to be doing the 2012 Rob Zombie classic, The Lords of Salem. I can't remember the sound.
Which sound? There's so many sounds.
The music. This. What's the musical sting? It's like, wah, wah. The sound of the Lords of Salem themselves.
The sound of the Lord of Salem themselves. Yes, they do give us the actual note so that we could play it if we wanted to. A dirge. It reminds me a lot of Caledon. I believe the name of the song is, by Cro-Magnon, a 1970s industrial song, for lack of a better term. Maybe it's 1960s. I think it's 1960s. It's extremely old, and it reminds me of something like the Lords of Salem would have produced, or the Lords, as they are also known.
This is some noise core, as the youths like to call it these days. This is our second attempt to talk about a Rob Zombie film. The first time we did probably his most famous film, House of a Thousand Corpses. Today we are doing The Lords of Salem. Was this a Lydia pick?
This was a Lydia and Wes pick, because we were talking about doing something evil, something that had to do with our pal Satan. And I love this movie. I do. And we maybe had tossed this around before, because way back in the day, maybe 2011 or so, 2012, I reviewed the book on, I guess it would have to be 2012, the book on my YouTube show. And I mentioned it in there that my friend, Wes, Dead Air Night, had seen the film and enjoyed it. And I alluded to something like, and there'll be more about Dead Air soon. Wink, wink. I don't know what that was. I guess I was talking about the show, but yeah, it was such a blast from the past. So I've probably had it in the back of my mind for the Dead Air list since then.
That's what I like about this era of the Dead Air podcast, is that we are finally tackling films. I'd say the last 50 or so movies have really been a mishmash of a lot of things, but we've been really knocking out films that we've been wanting to talk about for a really long time. The Lords of Salem is a film that I had not seen probably since back then. And I remember liking it way more than I liked really anything that Rob Zombie had done up to that point. And I came to the conclusion then, what is only been reinforced now, because I was curious, what am I going to think of this film when he has made many other films now? And his latest, I think, was the Munsters, his attempt at doing the Munsters. Rob Zombie's a weird guy. just a weird, very visually oriented guy. And I think with perspective on things that he was doing, particularly with Halloween 2, which was the last thing he did before doing this. When he was doing those Halloween remakes, he had the notion of doing the Lords of Salem in his mind. He wanted to move on to do something original and more creative. And you could see hints in Halloween 2 of these using Sherry Moon Zombie is iconography more than anything, and really going all the way with this film. There's so much noise in this film immediately, but at the same time so little dialogue and long language sequences where no one's talking, and you are just looking at impressionistic scenes which you are meant to interpret. And you would think this must be where his head and heart lies. He's a visual guy. He loves to make his music videos in the same sort of fashion. So maybe he just likes to make extended, trippy films that are kind of like long music videos. But then he goes ahead and he does films that kind of fly in the face of that, very dialogue heavy skits. Munsters is skits. It's skits, Lydia. Like there's nothing but like fast riffing in that film. So this really, was this the beginning and end of his art school days?
I don't know. 31 came out after this, and it is art school reject 101. It is, let's squeeze your head and get it all out. You want powdered wigs, you want mayhem, you want devious plans, you want a bit of noir in there with your Marie Antoinette horror escapades. Like, yeah, so I wouldn't say it was the end of it necessarily, because Devil's Rejects got very gritty. It's a very opposite sort of film, where we're working with a lot of harsh and natural light in Devil's Rejects, where this is very finely tuned as far as lighting and mood, very finely tuned. So I wouldn't say that auteur kind of phase will ever fade with Rob Zombie. His art school days will never ever fade, ever. But I still think that this is his best film. I really do. A lot of people have problems with it. It's really cut down the middle. Like it's sort of like either you like it or you don't, right? You think that it's a hot mess. You don't get it. It's overblown. It's a music video, or you can appreciate some of these longer scenes, some of the visual tactics he uses. You can appreciate his characterization and the story itself, where some people just dismiss it and angrily.
I think that while watching this film today, what kept coming back to me again and again is, I can see why this film rubs people the wrong way. Really. And I don't mean that. I am not a Rob Zombie hater by any stretch of the imagination. He has made films that work for me, and he has made films that very much do not work for me. But I'm in the camp of this film does work for me. I think that I agree with you. I think that this is his best film, or at the very least my favorite of the films that he's ever done. This also gives me not much more of an appreciation of Sherry Moon Zombie, but it certainly dulls a lot of the criticism I have of her as an actress, which, to be fair, she doesn't consider herself an actress. She is a person who does her husband's movies and is happy doing her husband's movies. She did a film as a favor for Tobe Hooper years ago. But other than that, it's strict. And I generally just have a lot of problems with her choices. But in this case, I think it's her best work, honestly, of what I've seen.
I absolutely agree there. I like Sherry Moon Zombie and always have, especially because she comes into her own, take it or leave it. Some people can look at her and be like, yeah, she's just her husband's wife and does these as favors because she's skinny and is a dancer and is hot. And is bubbly and smiles lots and can just be plugged into these roles that are clearly written for her. But then it's like, well, you try and be Baby Firefly. It's not, it is written for her, but it is still a role. And you can plug lots of people into roles. You're going to get a different thing. Someone can mimic Sherry Moon Zombie. Other people can do her stuff. So it is, while being, yes, written for her by Rob Zombie, it's not like so written for her that she doesn't have to act. She actually does have to act because she's not actually in Baby Firefly. And, you know, as much, like, I like Baby Firefly. I get why people don't. I get why people wouldn't like Heidi. There's some, you know, I have a hard time suspending disbelief all the time with Heidi, but as a character, I love Heidi. Anyone could have played Heidi, really. You could plug literally anyone into Heidi, and it just works as a character, as a believable character, no matter who's playing it. So I like the writing here, and it really, I like it. It's a role where she really shines in. And I think that on a really, you know, selfish catty point of view, she's not dressed up. She's dressed down in a lot of scenes. She looks so old. I think in this scene, in this like movie that came out in 2012, was filmed 2011. She looks older than she actually does now in this film, because she's supposed to look a little washed out, right? And a little bit bedraggled, and a girl that's like seen some shit, you know, and it really works. And I love that she owns it, right? And still manages to get some naked butt here and there. There's lots of naked butt, though, in this film. She's not the only little skinny waisted naked butt. She's not the only cellulite ridden naked butt. She is only one of like 30 other naked butts in this movie. So I really appreciate that, because a lot of people would, again, criticize her and him by saying, it seems like a Rob Zombie movie is just an excuse to get a naked Sherry Moon, or Sherry Moon's butt. You know, he's like, she has a nice butt, I guess. Like, there's male actors that want to show their butt in every single movie. Hello, Brad Pitt. But like, this is not just all about her butt. There are a zillion butts. So if you're a butt aficionado, I highly recommend The Lords of Salem.
That probably brings me to the most natural progression of this question ever in the history of this show. Lydia, what is this movie even about anyways?
This movie is about Sherry Moon's butt and how you can compare it to all the other butts. And, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So there might be some really nice, flabby, jiggly, naked chick butts wiggling around. No, it is about our past and how we cannot deny it. The book, which I will touch on here and there, drives this home so much more, but you do get it as the overall idea to do with the generations that have passed in a town that is so storied with so much history, like Salem, Massachusetts, that the past is undeniable. It is in your face, yet it has a way of creeping back up on you.
Well put. I just want to remind our audience that Lids isn't being a creeper. There are at least 2 distinct Sherry Moon zombie butt scenes in this film in which it is a languid take on this woman's posterior. We're just staring at her ass. And I don't really know what it is in service to, but I can tell you that if you are a fan of Sherry Moon Zombie's bum, you get that in this for at least. But I can tell you what else is in people's faces beyond the posteriors, and that is the opening sequence of this film. Almost immediately, what Rob Zombie excels at in his films is the wall of sound, you know, to evoke like dead insane man Phil Spector. But it is this cacophony of wails, of witches and screeching, and it looks like you are oh God, it looks like we have just opened up on a play. It looks like we are watching The Tempest or something, where we are looking at these hags, for lack of a better term, and we're looking at the goat heads, and they have symbols and blood on them, and they're wearing tattered robes, and they are immediately, Margaret is sermonizing and whipping these women up into a frenzy, and they were talking about the great deceiver, but they're talking about Jesus. They don't like that guy.
Who does?
And right, fucking pretty boy. But they strip naked, and so already you're like, oh my God, there's so much nudity. But and they are screeching and wailing and gnashing, and this is all before the opening credits, and then including the opening credits. And if you didn't know that you were watching a Rob Zombie joint, you fucking know now, because I do not think it is possible to watch this guy's films without these types of sequences where he just loves noise, and he loves people talking over each other, and he loves incoherence and the mania of these scenes. And then we immediately pull away, and we are in Heidi town in Salem, Massachusetts, and we are introduced to our protagonist, Sherry Moon, who is a radio DJ in the hottest game in town, the coolest radio station you've never heard about, the Big H.
What's crazy to me is that it starts out with like a TV commercial. And I like when Rob Zombie likes to throw in an interstitial or a TV commercial into his movies. I really like that sort of playfulness, but I'm like, it doesn't feel like a commercial because it doesn't have any information on it on screen like it would be a TV commercial. So like, who cut this and why? Is this something that plays in the lobby screens of the radio station or something? Like, it makes no sense. But yeah, if somebody watched The Witch and felt it was too slow, too languid, too quiet, they want their witches with a little more meat on the bones, then this is the film for you. Really, honestly, I think it came out 5 to 10 years too early. Quite honestly, it would have gone over so much better when witches were on everybody's minds and everyone wanted naked romping mothers, maidens, and crones and fires in the forest. This opening scene, superb. I love it. I think about it here and there, and I guess I didn't realize how often I think about this. I think about the book often because the book really puts a really good understanding and footing of the story as it's rooted in the past more so than the film. The film does, of course, skip back and forth with a little bit of why things are happening the way they're happening because of the past. The book really dwells on it. But when I first saw this film, because I'd read the book first, I thought, oh yeah, they're really doing this so much justice and they're getting the same sort of very creepy feel. They're also feeding into, in a negative aspect here, to the satanic panic or the witch craze of the witch trials. This is what people thought witches were all about. It's not, by the by, at all. But this is what people had in their minds. Want to hear something interesting, though?
I do, of course.
2 days ago, I found a goat skull in the parking lot across the road from my house. There were bones strewn all over. I know, right? Isn't that fitting? And so I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, poor little goat. So I've got the goat skull in my backyard, kind of relaxing right now. Because like a parking lot is no resting place for any animal. So I collected up some of the bones and I've got the skull here. I don't know exactly why it was in a parking lot in the middle of the city, but I took it as a little bit of an omen.
That's so very creepy and so very appropriate to you. I can tell you what else is creepy. The guy, the Swedish guy that they're interviewing. So what do you want to say about the Big H? This radio station is the fantasy of being in radio. This is what people who romanticized being on the radio in like the 1970s would have imagined their lives would be like. And in a lot of ways, before a lot of regulation, it was a more loosey-goosey. Everyone was kind of young. People didn't always feel the need to wear a shirt or shoes to the office. And you really could, with especially if someone greased the wheels a little bit, could play what you wanted to play and put things into rotation that you found interesting before. The mom and pop radio stations are like basically the way of the dodo these days, and they're all massive corporations who own multiple radio stations, who have advertisers, demographics to serve, and everything is very honed down and regulated. And it really is an office job. Yes, you could go like, here in Ottawa, we have like the Live 88.5. Like, I know some of the people that are on the radio there, very cool people. They are authentic and very neat and know their shit. But at the same time, it's an office. And this idea of this sort of like slick talking, everyone's slamming drinks, smoking, just this party atmosphere, that doesn't fucking exist. And I couldn't quite get the format of this radio station. And I'm not going to like harp too hard on this, because Rob Zombie is a guy that lives in the past. He's a very nostalgic guy. He likes to think about old movies and think about old music and think about old things. And so he was probably thinking about what he liked about radio when he was a little kid. And it was probably that atmosphere that he was romanticizing. And so he said, I'm creating these radio personalities. I'm creating this radio station. Therefore, it's going to be a cool radio station that you wish that you could work at, because you have, Sherry Moon Zombie can drag her ass out of fucking bed at like 10 o'clock at night and like, oh, I guess I'll go be on the radio now, and just go and sit there and smoke and drink and crack wise and play black metal. What are they like?
Yeah, it's not Bob or Jack in 98.8 in the daytime. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they're playing black metal, and they're like listening to a guy who is now talking about, say, like, he sounds like he should be in Mayhem or something like that. Like he's just going off about, getting revenge on organized religion. And this is a radio station. And then later Heidi is like, and time to play some Rush. And so I just don't, if this was a real radio station, it would have died 1,000 deaths in about 4 weeks, because no one would be listening to it, because no one would know what the fuck was going on, and advertisers wouldn't put their products on your radio station. You're talking about like, like anti-Christian rhetoric. So like, maybe this is just the coolest mom and pop. It's got Rob Zombie's usual group of knuckleheads in this film. So I'm surprised Bill Moseley is not in this.
I missed him, but Sid Haig is only there for like a blank. So, I mean, maybe Bill Moseley stopped by.
Yeah, he's got Ken Foray in there, and like Dee Wallace is there, and of course Sherry Moon, and like Barbara Crampton has a fucking blink and you'll miss it cameo. Like there's just Meg Foster. Talk about like you're just like, what?
It's an amazing cast that way. And I would like to cross-examine your grilling of radio stations, even though you are 100% correct. You are 100% correct. But like most things in this world, two things can be right at the same time. Exhibit A, WKIT, Bangor, Maine, the Rock of Bangor, Maine, owned by Stephen King. It is absolutely the rock and roll station of your dreams, I'm sure. I know they probably have an office, and it's probably Bob 98.2 in the daytime, but it is WKIT 100.3, Stephen King's rock and roll station. And it is the Rock of Bangor. And I know there's all sorts of vinyl spinning blues channel shows on there, because like that's the shit that Stephen King and Tabitha King dig, and very evident from their books and movies. And like Stephen King grew up with that sort of idea. So maybe Rob Zombie's writing about WKIT to a certain extent. Some college radio stations do operate with this old school level of lax attitude. I know that there's are like a lot of like evening shows, and that was like the biggest point though, was that there's no way this could subsist as a 100% station, and there's no way that metalheads would tune in to a variety show. They sound like a morning drive crew, and it's like just so off-putting, but realistic, I suppose. I had sat in as a student in the CBC radio and got to see them produce the long-running radio show, and I can't remember what it is, the call-in show that's been running on CBC all of our lives.
Oh, I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, that one. And it is so tightly produced. They are rolling tape, running sound effects. They've got music at beds in the background that are all done live, and it is a coordination of only about 3 people on most days. So maybe even 2 most days. So that sort of like tight knit, even though it's a very different tone on a call-in show for CBC radio, doing live radio like that, it can be that smooth and fun and boisterous and electrifying. It's just that these guys are sexist and ridiculous.
Yes, and I will concede that there are radio stations, there must be radio stations that exist that are as cool as you want them to be, but the numbers are on my side.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And that's all well and good, because as someone who was in radio, I love this depiction of radio because it keeps it alive for people who want that to be the radio station and what it was like and what it could be like still. It's not. But it's a nice fantasy, and it certainly was what attracted me to wanting to be in radio in the first place, because I was just as wooed by everyone else about popular depictions of radio. I thought I was going to be all pump up the volume. I thought I was going to be like telling people what it was really like, man, and fighting the power, man. And no, it was just so one of the guys in radio, I think it was our first week there, he grilled our class and he was like, what is the point of radio? What is the point of radio? And we all gave our answers, and he was like, no, horseshit, no, horseshit. And then he was like, write this down. This is the point of radio. Sell demographics to advertisers. And that was like week 1 of being in radio. So
yeah, we had to have a little shift of our psyche there in news as well, like newspapers. Is it that you're looking for ads to fill the ad holes? No. You're pouring news in between the ads. That's what it is. You're filling the paper not with ads to support yourself. The ads are there, and they're paying for you to pour. They don't give a shit what news ends up in between their ads from that perspective. Anyway, so yes, we get to meet Gorgon, the metal singer of Leviathan the Fleeing Serpent, a false black metal band. And when we see that amazing video for Crushing the Ritual by Leviathan the Fleeing Serpent, headed by Gorgon, it's actually Rob Zombie.
Oh, really? I had no idea. That's fucking fantastic and very appropriate. No, I love, as much as this is incredibly goofy, it's so fucking black metal. And it's like, they're making fun of black metal. No, they're not. This is exactly what it is. This is exactly what it is. If you take it seriously, that's your fucking fault. But when we are introduced to Heidi and we see her very cool, very luxurious lifestyle of sleeping in bed until God knows how, one of the weirdest things about this is, do you think Heidi strikes you as a howdy neighbor? As a, hey there, neighbor?
No, she strikes me as a grumble, get away from me, as straight normie squares while I smoke weed with my besties and play vinyl you'll never hear of and just look hot in my thrift store furs.
That's right, except she is a howdy neighbor in this case. Old room number 5. She sees a mysterious person that is the grumpy one to her friendly person, which is a good example, kids, to not judge a book by its cover, perhaps the dirty tattooed lady with dreads wants to talk to you. We never know. But this person doesn't want to talk to them. She goes downstairs and we encounter Lacey, who is, what do you want to say? The building is hers. So, you know, she's the landlady slash like almost like den mother.
Yeah, like dorm mom. That's what I thought of, even though these are adults.
These are adults, and this is a place in which Heidi is expected to pay rent. So it is a weird dynamic. And when you first watch this movie, the best part about Lacey is, you know, saying, "Oh, that room number 5, you know, we'll never. It's a good price, it's a good deal, but no one ever seems to want to rent it." And Heidi tells her, "Well, I saw a person up there," and she says, "That's impossible. No one's renting that place." And she seems, you know, it makes sense later, but she seems almost like, "Well, fine. You said you saw a person up there. I guess I'll go up and check. I don't see the point." Just say, like, and you're like, you're the landlady. Like, squatters are a thing. So you might want to, if someone says, "I saw a person standing in the doorway of room 5, and then they closed the door, they slammed the door behind them and locked it. Somebody's in there." No. Fine. I guess I'll go check. Which she does. And, well, kind of, sort of, not really. And then it is time to chill out after a long, hard day of blasting black metal and Rush in the same show. Don't question it. Listen, I don't hate Rush. I'm just a format snob where I'm just like, stick to your format. What's the format? If you're going to you're not going to listen to black metal. And anyways, when we go home with Heidi and, what is it? Whitey?
Yep.
Who should have been Bill Moseley. Don't you feel like that was supposed to be Bill Moseley? He got like, come on, like,
or Rob Zombie
guy
himself, quite honestly. Like, why not? I know it's a sin to like direct yourself or whatever, but like he very well could have. It's like we had to find the person that looked like Bill Moseley and was actually Rob Zombie in disguise. But be that as it may, perfectly acted, perfectly suited for the role. Very much so. Ken Foree, amazing. As the two Hermans, because that's why it's the triple H, Heidi Herman and Herman.
You know, I like that Rob Zombie just couldn't resist, and he had to get a Herman in there. And of course, the guy's like Munster, and he's just like, you know, that's why I was excited when he got the Munsters movie. Who knew it wouldn't be good? But the
I know, I can't believe it either. You know, really honestly, but that what was that cartoon one that he did? That it was like a skit or whatever.
Yeah, with like the luchador on the cover.
Yeah,
or whatever.
I wanted that to be so good. I thought Rob Zombie's brain, luchador, like sort of old like slapstick kind of cartoons. This will be perfect. And I don't know, I was Al Monstero? No, what was it? Anyway, I was disappointed. Unfortunately, it was just boring. It wasn't fun, and I wanted it to be so bad. Our expectations on Rob Zombie are so high.
When we have these, these two, Whitey and Heidi, hanging out together, they're doing what radio hipsters do. They are drinking and they are spinning vinyl. Everything is going fine until we get to a little bit of dead air. That's right.
We get a shout out in this film.
We do get a shout out in the Lords of Salem. I appreciate it, Rob. Thank you. We're shouting you out for this whole episode, so I think we're even. No, it's poison. It is radio poison, dead air. It is the worst thing ever, which is why I try very hard to get rid of my pregnant pauses, which is not always easy for me.
That's why I edit them out.
Thank you. You know, when I'm having a little Tourette's moment where I'm jerking around and not talking, but when all of a sudden, to squash that awful dead air, they're going to put on a record. Where did it come from? We got a little bit of a Babadook situation. Who knows where that book came from, but it's there. Let's play it. And this was a mysterious record in a wooden box that was like left on their doorstep or left with their receptionist. It just sort of appeared magically, they say. And when they play it, I mean, it's very experimental, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it very much is. And I think that it comes as a really good tonal shift. They've, been working at this kind of high energy night drive show. I don't know what the hell you call it. Some night entertainment metal show or whatever. And then they've kept it rolling with a little bit of wine and conversation between two really good friends who may be more than friends or a budding relationship there, or at least on behalf of Whitey, played by Jeff Daniel Phillips, becomes like, you think that one of them's enamored with the other. Maybe they're going to eventually hook up or something like that. It's just a very good friendship, great way to start a relationship, quite honestly. But like, you've got that sort of like, you're in with them at the after hours sort of feel of their coming down from a high energy shift. And then all of a sudden we're dropped into the bottom of the ocean on a gigantic piece of lead by this music. And it works really well because it has a really a distinct and off-putting effect on Heidi. Heightened, of course, by visuals. Thank you, Rob Zombie, for explaining to us what she's feeling, because this is one of those things in the book that's kind of tough to get along, to really understand what the feeling is like of listening to this music. We've heard through the ages of songs that influence people to do things, whether it is the Blue Monday song, kind of mythologically depresses people so much. And then there's other songs that like seem to have effects on people. And there's, the way the DJs, you hear them talk about certain tones and what they can do with a crowd, how they could like with sound make everyone duck, make everyone jump. Like they can do that. They can influence us. They work hard. B.K. Evanson is the guy writing it with Rob Zombie in the novelization, which it feels weird to call it a novelization when it's more of just the book. It feels like the movie was made from the book when it's vice versa. But anyway, they have a kind of hard time explaining how this is transportative and takes you as a woman back to somewhere primordial and gives you visions of covens and masses and childbirth and insanity. And it all works really well, I think. And I think this is where some people who don't like impressionistic films, they don't like art films, really start to distance themselves in this film and start to dislike it, because this music begins and it is dissonant, it's repetitive, it has no real lyrics that are discernible. It's not fun to listen to. It's oppressive. It's almost annoying. Yet it has transfixed Sherry Moon Zombie's character entirely and has given her visions to which her friend Whitey is not privy to. And I think that it's a really good scene. And it stands in real contrast from like the Midnight Drive energy of their radio show to this gigantic, oppressive weight that is suddenly displayed on film. And I think it's done really well.
Yeah, Heidi up until this point was really a chill girl, a cool girl, a woman who is in recovery. She was a drug addict, and now she's got her dog and she's got her cool life, and she's able to crack wise, and she just seems to be happy to be clean and sober, and everything's looking up. This shift from what she would be to be on the radio, to be that character that you're being, to project to people that they expect and want from you, and then to have these private moments with her friend, platonic, but maybe we could see in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
But for now,
they get along really good, and it's cute.
Yeah. Right. And there's no like gross flirting. Like it's flirting that it's in a way that like, if the kind of thing, where if one of them were to leave the room, their friend would be like, so what's going on with you two? Like, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Like, I'd be like, so man, like, you like this girl a lot, right? So I'd be like, no, we're just friends. I'm like, you sure? Because anyway, she was into it. This oppression is, it starts with like it's almost as if it's like a splitting headache that this sound is generating in her mind while it's taking her to this baffling, but not in a bad way, but there's almost no context to any of these visions that we're seeing, that we later find out, Margaret and her coven, this is the 1600s. This is the birth of 1636 or whatever it was.
1696.
1696. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And, the birth of Salem, Massachusetts. And, she's like licking a baby clean, but there's something vile in the flavor, this flavor of this baby. It sounds weird, but that made contextual sense, where I was like, yes, this is very primordial. It's like a mother of any mammal giving birth, and like the baby covered in like blood and placenta and all that kind of stuff. And you're like licking it clean. Like animals do that in nature. Yeah, but this witch is offended by what she tastes, and she spits on the baby. She rejects it. She's spitting on it. And so if you ever want to see someone spit on a baby, this movie's for you.
Or licking a baby clean.
Or licking a baby clean. These scenes almost seem like they're from a different movie. The colors are just a little bit more crisp, a little bit more vibrant. Everything's honed down to, again, I keep going back to, it's impressionistic. You are looking at a red, orangey landscape in a ruined like area. It almost looks apocalyptic, and you're like, where are we? And it's like, I guess we're in Salem, but where in Salem? In the desolate rocks of Salem? Like, where in Salem is this supposed to be? I don't see a fucking tree, let alone anything that would indicate that we're in Massachusetts. Like, things haven't changed that much since the 1600s. Like the Precambrian Earth. That's what it looks like. Like it's bizarre. But when we get back to this, Heidi is forever changed, and we immediately start with the spooky stuff. We got ourselves, people. Like there's the first indication we see is like when she walks past the kitchen, there's like a person that she doesn't notice there.
Which I like. This is the beginning of some of these little bits, a little note. Like Jason Blum was instrumental in bringing this film to us, and there's nothing like a Blumhouse film for those little tiny scenes of things in the shadows. And not that it isn't also a very Rob Zombie thing to do. It really reminds me of all the Blumhausian sort of nods that we see in Blumhouse type films. And this is just one of those. And this is the beginning of it. And there's quite a bit more to come. But I really like these dead people in the bathroom when she walks by, people up in the corner of the kitchen when she's getting ready to take her dog out. And it's just, they're so creepy looking. And they're all like naked witches, right? So it's like super creepy. We've had our eye full of sky-clad hags dancing around the fire at night, and now they're harshly lit in full tungsten light of your cool little apartment. Very different look for these women, and it's very unsettling. I think that the dread begins with those sorts of like bits where you're seeing people out of the corner of your eye as a viewer.
When we're in the next day and we're interviewing Francis, who is the author of a book that he had written about the Salem witch trials, and were initially, again, treated to more satanic imaging that's on the book and all that kind of stuff. This is an aspect that I would wonder if you were if you practiced Wicca. Is this movie pretty offensive to you? Because there's no, even when they're talking about the Salem witch trials, generally speaking, people try to point out like what was really going on with the Salem witch trials, and the misogyny and the brutality of it all, and this, that, and the other thing. None of that. It's more just like what people who call themselves witches are fucking crazy, and they believe in garbage, and like, I don't mind characters saying things like that, but it's just weird that this is the expert who has perhaps the most antagonistic opinion about the subject of his book.
I don't know if any Wiccans should be offended by anything to do with witchcraft, because Wicca was, of course, made in 1970s by Gerald Gardner. So it's not an ancient earth religion at all. Mm-hmm. It's a modern hippie idea, little theology based on more like druid thinking, if anything. Mm-hmm. So like it's kind of funny in a way, in that on one hand, yeah, you could be super offended by this guy being like, yeah, no such thing as witches. They're all just deranged. It was an illness, a psychiatric affliction. And on the other hand, it's like, yeah, buddy, that's what we want you to think. So you just toddle off there and write your stupid books for the masses while we practice hereditary, ancient, pagan rituals that have been passed down for centuries. That is a way of life that you obviously don't understand. So just like most people who would have persecuted us, you're just another like witchfinder general in different clothes, and way more pacifist, luckily for us.
Very interesting take. I like it. I also find it interesting that they didn't go that route. I just kept thinking about it again and again while I was watching the film, where I was wondering if it's Rob Zombie just doing his Rob Zombie thing, where he says, "This is my fucking story about evil witches, and they worship Satan, and that's my story, and I don't want to add any dialogue that could make it seem like they're anything other than villains." And so maybe that is really more what he was interested in. And there's nothing wrong with that. I was just curious. It was just something that I noticed now in the year 2024 watching it, where I was like, oh, there's no like other side of the conversation happening amongst these characters. It's all just like, oh yeah, they're all fucking nuts. Even when Francis goes and finds another expert, he seems to have more hatred. He's like, oh yes, the expert that would know more than I know about the witch trials and all that kind of stuff. He seems to hate them even more.
Which is crazy and hilarious, especially when, like, I don't know if anyone that practices witchcraft or any pagan religion for that matter, or Wicca, should be offended by anything they say in this movie, because of course it is like completely fantastical, and it's taking place in Salem, which is the most witch-centric, witch-positive place outside of Merrickville, Ontario, that you could possibly go and have a witchy good time and be surrounded by like-minded individuals that understand, support, and celebrate witchcraft in all of its guises. But then they have all these experts, quote unquote, in this town, in this film, that are like anti-witchcraft and think they're all crazy, and like probably think that they did a good thing cleaning up this town from that scourge of witches in the 1600s, like, which is the dead opposite of the way that people treat witches and witchcraft in Salem, obviously, because they have so many like amazing Halloween activities. So I've been told, because I've heard the girls from the Faculty of Horror podcast talk about, they go to Salem every year, and Amy goes to Salem often with her mother. Yeah. So like, Sean Moreland has visited Salem. A lot of people have visited Salem that I know. I have not had the pleasure, but I want to, mostly to go to museums and bookstores and the witchy places that are there, that are, like I said, witch positive, witch supportive, and celebrate witchcraft.
Even if I hear the hack the hack is to go outside of Halloween.
Yes.
Because Halloween, it's like packed. And I know how you feel about crowds, even amongst your people.
Yeah.
I like if you want to like browse your museums and bookstores in peace, maybe don't go in October. But I would even think that these guys who are like, what a bunch of fucking hogwash, to have such an antagonistic opinion about something that, let's just take it to the lowest common denominator: capitalism, tourism. Can you not at least appreciate that this is a massive boon for your middle of nowhere town that gets pilgrimages from all over the world because people buy into this hogwash, this bullshit, this insanity, these crazy women? They listen to this album live on the air, and we have, again, more nudity. I remember, like, I'm like, who's this? Whose giant breasts are these? And then again, it's just all of these women in Salem who are listening to the radio, because, you know, most people are listening to terrestrial radio in their homes. Don't question it. They hear this, and all of a sudden, like the call of Cthulhu, they are looking to the great beyond, and they seem to be just as affected as Heidi was and is, because remember, she's now hearing this song for the second time. It seems to be having that same oppressive effect on her, whereas everyone else in the room, men, are not being affected whatsoever.
Luckily, she has the wherewithal, or maybe even just the privilege of saying, can you mute that? It's giving me a headache. So she doesn't get the full dose this time of this song that has no name, from what I understand, from the Lords, and everyone else in town does. This in the book is handled extremely well. They, of course, because it's a book, they have so much more lateral bandwidth to explain shit to you, that like these people have names and these people have vocations, and these people, they give a little more background for all these random people shit's affecting. And it's done very similarly in The Stand by Stephen King, when everyone is getting affected by Captain Trips, the super flu, that you get glimpses of just random people. And they do this in a lot of zombie things, like what Day Zero looks like to lots of people. And I really like this scene here with just all these women just stopping, dropping, staring, and supplicating, getting naked. A lot of naked, a lot of butts. You like butts? We got butts. You want to see more butts? We got them right here. All sorts of butts. And one thing, though, is that you notice, of course, the men aren't affected, but it will turn out that women who aren't born in Salem aren't affected. Because this isn't like every woman in the whole damn town. It's most women. And of course, women listen to the radio, which is also a rarity. But this is also, we talked about that a little bit in Pontypool, where the whole town listens to the radio all the fucking time. Like, what the hell era is this, man? Dude, do you not have television? But yes, it will turn out, because it doesn't affect the author's wife either. And she hears it. Luckily, she records it. But yeah, this is an interesting scene, because by now, Heidi's starting to get the effects of whatever it is going on with her in the town. She's becoming a little more surly. She's becoming a little more snappy. She's got this relentless headache. She's becoming a little more distant already.
Her friends are concerned for her, starting at home with Lacey and her sister and their friend, this sort of trio of women who like to yap, and they like to have this, like the Golden Girls. They just like to have sweets and tea and gab and read palms and talk about giving in to your repressed sexual desires and the darkness in your heart, just like Blanche and Rose and the rest of them would have talked about over cheesecake.
Or every single witch coven I've ever met in my entire life.
It really is giving the old people in Rosemary's Baby. Don't you feel?
Yeah.
Like just this very obvious, if you know what kind of movie you're watching, like all of a sudden these older, well, I mean, in Rosemary's Baby, it's not just women, but in this it is, you know, and when we are encountering this, you know, Heidi still has a bit of her self still intact, and she's like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, I just want to go home. I just want to go back to my home. And she is going to be continuously plagued by these dark visions, getting more intense and more vivid, to the point in which, you know, she will go to a church and it will be this outrageous scene where they don't indicate to us that she might be hallucinating until after she's waking up from the hallucination. So all of a sudden it's just, oh, she's just blowing this guy.
Yeah. And the priest is like spitting out black ichor, and like this happens with her friend Whitey. He has the whole like starts saying fucked up shit to her. She starts seeing fucked up shit. His face changes into a monstrous demonic face, and then she wakes up. And most of the time, except for the church scene, she's waking up in bed. So we're like, is this a Stephen King Pet Sematary thing where you actually did go out and encounter these ghostly or demonic beings and were like up and ambulatory in the other room doing this in apartment 5 or elsewhere? Or is this 100% a dream? We as the viewer don't know. Heidi doesn't know.
I keep getting the sense that this is happening and that she is waking up and experiencing missing time and assuming that she is dreaming. So much of it seems so vivid and so bizarre. There's one sequence, and especially when she's seeing people in a room, I'm like, that person is there, like talking about like bleed us king, you know, of like an almost unrecognizable Meg Foster, who I always remember as Evil Lynn from the Masters of the Universe movie. But I mean, she's been in like tons of other stuff like They Live and stuff. So, you know, again, just Rob Zombie and his stunt casting, he loves to just get people in there. Like I said, you know, Barbara Crampton, she's one of the women who hear the Lord's song and becomes mesmerized. And so it's really cool. And anytime you see like those weird priests, pope type guys, like, I'm like, those guys are really there, right? Like, they're definitely like actually in her room.
I think so. And I think it makes a lot of sense later on in the film. There's a scene where she is bedraggled. She's out of it. She's been out of it for days. And we'll get to that, how out of it she really gets. But she has makeup on. And it's kind of like a smoky black eye. And it's like, oh, you're all so fucked up, but you had time to put on makeup? Like, how, like I believe this. But you've seen a day or two previous, she would have been wearing full-on corpse paint in one of these visions. It's like, oh, okay. So you could have like actually done that. You would have actually had these symbols on you and this corpse paint type thing. And this is just left over from that. Maybe that makes some sense. Cause if you could sleep in some good quality corpse paint for a couple days and you look pretty fucked up, but you would still have like the blackened eyes and stuff like that. So like if she was actually going through with any of these to any extent, it would make a lot more sense, especially with some of the bruising and cuts that she ends up with on her face, aside from some of the wear and tear she's putting herself through.
Lydia, let me ask you this. What is more metal than a bunch of witches hundreds of years ago crafting a song so satanic that it affects people and causes them to become thralls of, you know, he who shall not be named? Because that's exactly what Francis is thinking might have happened when he discovers in a book a song, because that's there, duplicates the song just follows the notes that are written down on the page. The same tune that was played on that vinyl record just the other day. And it causes him to track down the author of this book, where he reveals that Margaret and her coven, all those years ago, in 1696, created this song. Wind instruments, string instruments. I don't know why they did this, but they did this. And they were burned alive because of it.
What I like about this scene is that not long after, we get told that his wife is from, I forget where, Pacific Islander of some sort. She's Portuguese or something.
Venezuela, I believe.
Okay. Not from Salem, not born in Salem. And that, because you could be watching this and being like, well, why isn't she going into a stupor? She's recorded this. She heard it when she recorded the radio for him. She's playing it now on a piano over and over while listening to it, and it's not affecting her. But yeah, so they just dropped that little hint that it's only affecting the sisters of Salem, so to speak, like women that were born there and that have bloodlines that go back to the time when these witches would have created this song. So it resonates within their very blood, which makes a lot of sense in a poetic kind of way. It's not telegraphed clearly enough, like so much other things in this film, where it is far too impressionistic for a lot of people, and they can't follow it along, especially not with minute details like that.
I think, though, that Rob Zombie did account for this. I really think so, because when you're watching this movie, there is so much of this that is hard to parse if you were only looking at it through the lens of Heidi and that character. And you would think to yourself, okay, well, this is kind of like a Dario Argento style descent into madness, supernatural, Satan, witches. Who cares? We're watching a woman kind of slowly lose her mind and not being able to tell real from fake. And he is going to use a lot of strong visual representation to have this, you know, and you can go deep on the visual represent up to and including the fact that her bed is framed by one of the most iconic images in science fiction and film, The Moon from a Trip to the Moon, one of the first science fiction films ever done. And you could say like a trip to the moon, a trip to the outer reaches, to the great beyond, to the unknown, you know, encountering, you know, in that film, they encounter like Martians, which are like exploding demons and stuff like that. So you could see where he is getting a lot of this stuff from. But then just in case it's too artsy fartsy for you, you got old Francis here to just spell it the fuck out for you. And that was where I think is a real stroke of genius, because while I'm watching this film, I'm like, why do we keep going back to this fucking guy? Why do we keep fucking talking to Francis? And it seems like such a throwaway. His initial scene when he's talking about his book, you would, this character is going to be in and out of here.
Yeah, I think it's just like, flavor.
Oh yeah, just so maybe she can go to him later. But these characters do not really fucking interact with each other after this point. And he is doing his own perpetual library scene where he is the one that is discovering what this song is and it means. He is the one that is finding experts to go back and explain where this song might have come from, the coven where it was created. Well, meanwhile, rightfully or wrongfully, and this could be one of the things that rubs people the wrong way, Heidi just is a fucking plastic bag in the breeze. Like it is just things, I'm going to say things are happening to her. No, things have happened to her. And this entire film is her waiting to accept her fate and having no agency whatsoever surrounding it, while Francis is the person that is sleuthing and getting under there. Now, it's not entirely Heidi's fault, because she's put her trust in people who do not have her best interests in heart and are ignoring people like Munster and Whitey who are her friends and who think that she's back on the smack. They think she's drugged out again, which all of her behavior could be a very reasonable and realistic example of a relapse.
It very well could. So she's not going to take it anymore. She's going to fight back with a glass pipe, and her dealer. And she's going to get stoned out of her fucking mind to cope with this. So it makes sense in a way that, the strong, bubbly, friendly, smart woman, we're saying, have her psyche torn apart by forces beyond her control, finally does crack, and not crack and give into them, but I guess in a warped way, fight them the only way she knows how, with clouding her mind with drugs. It does nothing but help them. Now we do have, again, Bruce Davison's character wanting to come to the rescue as best as he can. And as an aside, Bruce Davison also played the Reverend Samuel Parris in the film The Crucible, alongside Winona Ryder. So he's been in a Salem witch trial thing before, albeit on the other side of that coin. He was basically one of the right-hand man to the Witchfinder General, so to speak, in that, as being the accuser and the reverend that wanted to see all these women suffer and stuff like that. So he has been in a Salem movie that was a period piece as well. So it's just neat to see him, almost seeing that hereditary kind of behavior come down, but him wanting to set the record straight, if you're thinking about it in this sort of anti-canon way, that he wants to help Heidi and save her and stop this.
Particularly since he has uncovered something through the miracle of modern technology, Liz. Now, we have talked about our witch finder generals in the annals of history, but there is a witch finder general that was in existence in Salem all those years ago, or at the very least, the person who read the proclamation as Margaret and her coven burned and cried out in agony. And that is the devious, pious, self-righteous Reverend Hawthorne, who has a direct descendant still living in Salem today. The revelation that perhaps Heidi's being chosen and oppressed like this isn't exactly random, and is actually, in fact, very specific. Now, why would they wait hundreds of years to find one of Hawthorne's direct descendants when, in theory, he would have had a descendant in every generation? Did it take that long for them to have a daughter? Was that the mitigating factor that made everything come to pass now in this time? We don't know. But we do know that Heidi is a direct descendant from Hawthorne in the most outrageous way possible, because I don't know if you know this, Lydia, you could just Google someone's name in a family tree and their entire family tree is available online, unbroken, like every single descendant for centuries. Just type in the name.
And if you join Ancestry.com right now, we'll send you a kit for your own DNA sample to tell exactly where you come from. Thank you to our sponsor, Vamps Barn Bites. Yeah. No, we're not sponsored by either Ancestry.com or Vamps Barn Bites. Although I wish we were. I have saved myself a video of me scrolling through the Twitter feed of Vamps Barn Bites by the by, so that I have it saved forever and ever. Amen. But yeah, you can to a certain extent go through very famous families. Like we're talking about Witchfinder General. You can research Cotton Mather from the beginning of time to nowadays. You can try and find descendants of all kinds of kings and queens. You can find descendants of terrible people in history. You can find quite a lot. Like I can follow my own family tree back to probably the 1600s on one side and maybe the 1500s on the other, because people didn't write stuff down or churches burned. So you can't get everything you want. But with a very famous family like that, typically on Ancestry.com and any other GEDcom, there is a very, very real and serious protection of privacy. Anyone living is not listed. Anyone who has not submitted their information or the information of their descendants is not listed. So Heidi probably wouldn't be listed unless, before she was a junkie, she decided that she wanted to put her own information in there. She guards her real name because she's mentioned before that record that was delivered in the box was delivered to her under her real name. And she was like, I don't even know how they got my real name, because she guards that as a privacy concern of hers. So she wouldn't have probably gone out and populated this like who's who in rock radio website with her real name, let alone have it listed in the Hawthorne family tree on some GEDcom thing. Now, there could be other people that are related in the bloodline on either maternal or paternal side who would accidentally list that without knowing that she is any sort of celebrity or protects her name. They would just be like, oh, Bob's kid, Heidi. I'll just put that in there because I think that's her name. I met her once when we were 3 years old. Whatever. That's my cousin. And just fill it in without any sort of consent or without understanding any sort of breach of privacy has taken place. And it's all very innocent. So it could, there could be. Having done lots of genealogical research as a hobby through the years, I can see how that would happen, especially with a very famous bloodline, right? But
True.
I don't know. If you go type in your name, if you've not done any genealogical research, no one adjacent to you has done a lot of genealogical research, you may not find anything.
My family had quite the tenacious lore keeper. My Aunt Daisy lived to be 103, and she passed away just last year. And she was the lore keeper. She was the person that very vigorously tracked our entire family histories. My mother's side is a little tricky because my mother was adopted, but we had adopted in those days. Records were sealed and lost. So, but I can tell you what's not lost, Lydia. It's finally discovering what is in room 5, because she wants to see what's in there, and her friends who are like Lacey and her sister and Dee Wallace, there's no more artifice. They're going to take you into room 5, and what is in there? Well, it's a fucking opera house somehow, impossibly, an affront of time and space. Requiem Lacrimosa is playing, and there is a little not very good demon. I hate this demon design. What do you think?
I hate this demon design too, and I get it's supposed to be like a half-formed, on its way to being fully realized, humanoid type creature demon that needs more energies. This whole scene's done so much better in the book because it's left to your imagination, and you can make it so much more grotesque and less weird and munchkin-y than it comes across on screen.
It's not. There's a fine line when you are depicting demons in cinema, and I can count on one hand when it really works for me. When a demon design is inventive and intimidating, has an iconic silhouette, but somehow remains unique, or is such a prime example of what you would imagine a demon might look like. And it just works on all levels. And then there's other times where I find it lazy or goofy. And this is just goofy, man. This, like, it is not scary. It's not cool. It's not intimidating. There's nothing that is keeping me from wanting to bust out laughing about how stupid this fucking demon looks. and his stupid little tentacle dicks. And then what made it even worse is when she is laying on the bed and this ordeal is over, and then this demon steps next to the bed. It is even more laughable than when it was before. So this demon sucks. I can't stand it, but it doesn't ruin the movie for me. But I just think that if you can't make something visually work, it was so lit. You know what I'm saying? That,
Yeah.
There was nowhere for that design to hide in that opera house, and it really desperately needed to be hidden. It needed to be. They did a demon earlier, which was in heavy silhouette. It looked like, oh, they're being haunted by Bigfoot, but at least it was obscured enough that you could imagine that this could be anything, and it's just this shape, and it's meant to be bestial and terrifying and long nails, and you're like, okay, I get it.
I think that was Michael Berryman, because he's got a credit.
Yes, I believe you're right.
Well, I don't know about the demon look, especially when he comes stomping up to her bedside like a weird little munchkin. He looks like something out of Phantasm films. It's not scary. And okay, sometimes the goal of horror isn't to be scary or it's to be unsettling, but it's not. But then how would you feel if the actual depiction of half of the demons came stomping up to you? So you've got this guy with horns and a lion's mane, and he's also got a lion as a dick with its tongue protruding, and he comes dancing up to you, because a lot of them dance. Like, it's not scary. It would, and some of them are very short as well. So like, okay, so you got this like, okay, you got Asmodeus with like 3 heads and trumpets and wings, and he looks like the ultimate tattoo because he's got like a hat and wings and thunderbolts and all kinds of shit going on, and like different animals making up his legs. Payman, not the most scariest looking demon. If you
that's true.
Get through like some of the demons,
looks quite erudite, that Payman. He looks
yeah. Moloch. You want some cow?
Yeah.
You want Beelzebub?
Yeah.
It's literally a bee. It's literally a bee. So, I mean, he's not scary. Kind of goofy. Moloch's very goofy. I mean, Baphomet, scary. Baphomet, that could be legitimately scary. Baal's not scary. Baal's kooky looking. If you had Baal coming up to you, unless Baal's huge, like Leviathan or something. But
man, you're like bumming me out with reminding me of how dumb wood carved images of demons are. I was like, the lesser key of Solomon didn't do these bozos any favor. But okay, do you think, we brought up the witch earlier, and I want to ask you, the goat is a prominent feature in this film. And we know that Satan as goat became very, very popular. I mean, it was always in the iconography, but I'm talking about to the mainstream public. Black Phillip became the symbol of like, okay, we get it. So more people started using that in their iconography to depict Satan. If they're using a goat constantly in this film, like several times throughout this film, they're using a goat.
He's even the title card. There's like a cute little goat face in the title card.
There's a shape, an entity walking a goat towards Heidi. There's a very impressionistic sequence that happens with a goat and Heidi in a couple of minutes in this film. But why not make the demon like a big Baphomet goat guy? Like why not just go all the way? Or is that too on the nose?
I think it is partially too on the nose, and they don't want to feed too much into this idea that Satan is a goat and can like travel around the world as a goat, because it's just supposed to be like an adversarial to the sheep in a way, right? Okay. So there's also like, and I don't know anything about Masonic, and part of the things that are playing and the things that are being said while she's literally riding the goat is about like there's Masonic meanings in there. Like I don't know every single iconography to do with a goat, except that cool skull I found. That is so cool. That is so. And I was watching this movie just thinking, man, it made me want to watch The Witch just to see more Black Phillip. I grew up with goats, so I think they're just fun. They're just, I don't know what that says about me, having grown up with goats. Never rode one though. Never rode one.
Oh my God. We're getting distracted by all of these goats, but Francis is a man on a mission. He is going to get some information to this woman. No more being a plastic bag blown around this fucking narrative. You are going to become an active participant in your own story, lady, right here, right now. Where are you though? I'll go visit your house. Oh, Lacey and her witches actually are doing what they do, being really friendly old Gabby women. And he's going to get frying panned to death.
Yeah, which is really brutal scene. And like, I like that they've been trying to protect Heidi in their way. And when he called on the phone, they're like, you have the wrong number. Don't call back. It's terrible of you to call at such a frightfully late hour as it is. Click. And they're very old lady about it. They continue to be very old lady about it when they dummy him with a frying pan, beat him to death. There's blood all over the place. And they're like sitting around going like, what a shame of waste of a nice man. Yeah. Anyway, I'd feel like some brandy or whatever they decide to.
It was tea. Who wants a fresh pot of tea?
Fresh pot of tea.
And you're just like, this is like the Golden Girls meet Sanderson sisters meet Rob Zombie. This is like what you imagine some hoity-toity old blood existing in Salem, guardians of the faith, if you will.
It makes me think that he grew up with a lot of these sorts of women in his life and spent time with great aunts and aunties and grandmas and such.
I have people in my family that are exactly like these women. Not murdering people with a frying pan, mind you, but just that very waspy, very like proper, very much about the rules of polite society. Not necessarily that they're exceedingly wealthy people from old money, but just like, well, that's not very proper. Well, that's not very proper. Like a lot of like I said, like I always use the example when I was growing up, a lot of like whisper yelling through clenched teeth while the top of my arm is being held in a kitchen while there's other people like, you're going to be a little gentleman. You're going to stop. You're going to shape up. You're going to fly away. Like that time. Like,
now here's your Queen Anne bone china, tiny, tiny cup of tea, and you go sit in the corner, you behave, and you enjoy it.
Yeah. Stop clicking your shoes together, Wes. Yeah. It's very distracting. John Wesley. Somebody whispered John Wesley in my life. But that's all well and good because all through this, the guys at the radio station have been trying to get Heidi back in the job. She's been late for work. She's just straight up missing work. And they believe that she is conked out. And believe you me, she is. She's conked out, booty cheeks out. She is just like flopped on the fucking floor. But they got a fucking show tonight because guess what? The Lords of Salem are here. And we got tickets, actually free tickets. It's an event. And Whitey goes to the house. The coven tries to distract them. And then what follows is fucking wild. What do you want to say about the last 10 minutes of this film?
Well, it's all very straightforward, Wes. They get tickets to go see the Lords. The Lords of Salem are going to play in Salem, Massachusetts, and they're going to perform their song for everybody. And they do. You're
right. When how silly of me. When they manage to get Heidi to the venue. And at this point, Heidi is very much under Lacey's control. Lacey is like allowing her to go. It's okay. You can go.
And she's smoking a lot of crack too. Like there's a scene that's discordant in here where she's smoking crack alone, repeating lines, mumbling lines from a French lesson that doesn't seem to fit very well. It fits in the book because she had grand ideas of learning French and going to Paris and all this stuff and visiting Jim Morrison's grave or something. I have no idea. But it fit so much better, and it was so much more heartfelt, and it was so much more heartbreaking to see her go back to that lifestyle, where in the film it's like we were just waiting for it in a way. But yeah, she can hardly walk straight, let alone how they're going to get to, and at this venue at the last minute she goes in and they're not allowed.
The door locks behind them, and it's almost as if they've been transported to another dimension. This venue, it's this big sort of auditorium area, and it's not filled with women, but there's perhaps there's like 30-ish women in the seats, all looking at, well, who's there but Lacey and her sister and all them. And they show up, and then behind them, back from the seeming dead, is Margaret and her original coven from the 1600s. It seems to be that this entire thing was waiting to feast on the blood of the descendants of the people who murdered them all those centuries ago. And now the chosen one is to give birth to a lobster baby.
A lobster baby, or Satan, or something, or like the return of their king, Satan, I suppose. But it's not any colloquial depiction of Satan that we're used to whatsoever. But maybe this is like a proto-Satan. Maybe this is like he's got some maturing to do. I'm not really sure, but I do really enjoy their show, and I would go see this show. And it's a lot like what I depict a Heilung show to be like, where they're introduced by these three women that are extolling them and praying to Satan and whoever. If it's a Heilung show, it would be some Norse thing. And then they show up with all their instruments made of bones and sinew. Very interesting show, so to speak. And I can't imagine what the effect would be, because the effect of hearing the song over the radio has been so pronounced across this town. To hear it live, their souls must have just exploded. Yeah, it's done very, very well in the book as well, and I really do like the depiction until it gets kaleidoscopic.
Kaleidoscopic is really the right term for it. While watching this sequence, it was one of those moments. There's Sherry Moon Zombie writhing on top of a goat. It all looks like a play, like I've said before. All of a sudden, there's a black metal member. It's just sort of behind her, rutting. I don't know if they're having sex or what the idea is, but and again, he goes into full, I'm making a music video. And there is effects that I would call cheap, like where it really just looks like you were in Photoshop and you just like moved some images around and like blurred things out. And it's almost the boldness with how amateurish it is. I kind of respect, because this was in theaters. This was like, you had to fucking put down your hard ass money to watch this fucking movie. And I'm not saying that this makes it dog shit, but I guarantee you there was people in that audience that at that point, and you've been here for 90 minutes, you may as well stay for the last 10. It's wild. It's wild and such an interesting choice, and so very Rob Zombie, where you're asking yourself, what is this experience? And you are looking at an impressionistic idea of mating with a demon, resulting in the birth of some kind of version of the Antichrist. It looks like a crawfish or a lobster. It looks like something that can't survive out of the water. And also,
yeah.
they could easily be cooing it and marveling over it because they can't wait to fucking eat that with butter.
Yeah.
It's hard
or
to
it's
really
from Thing. Like, it's the Thing, basically. It's a weird tentacled crawfish creature.
It's a little whippy puppet, a lot of tendrils. We learn what happens in this place. And if you were not convinced that Rob Zombie very much had this movie on his mind by the time he was making Halloween 2, the image of Sherry Moon Zombie as this messianic, like satanic Virgin Mary on top of a pile of bodies, it directly evokes the images that are all over Halloween 2 in the sequences that people have a lot of problems with. And you could see that Rob Zombie felt he was contractually obligated to make Halloween 2. He was given carte blanche to do what he wanted in that film, but still had to work within the parameters of doing a sequel to an IP that you do not own. His heart was not in it. And I think that is the biggest problem with that film, because he wanted to fucking make this. And it was very obvious that he wanted to make this because he just did it again. Really.
Part of me believes that his heart wasn't entirely in this either, because he must have had 31 on his mind because of all the teacups and all the teacups and proper acting, powdered wig bullcrap and stuff like that, and people behind the scenes with all the power kind of stuff. I think he definitely had 31 on his mind by the time the tail end of this, especially with the Requiem scenes where you're going into apartment 5 for the first time for real, or not for real at all. Who knows? I do agree with that, because it does evoke so many of the Michael's mother scenes in Halloween, and I didn't like those scenes in that film at all. I felt they did not fit. Here, I love it. I love it because it's evoking the same sort of feeling you get at the end of Midsummer and other movies where the final girl is this messianic goddess type creature. And I do, it's pulled off very, very well. And if you're a Sherry Moon Zombie fan, you're just like, damn right.
I agree with you. I think that it does not work at all in Halloween 2. It absolutely works here. And I think because this is of a piece, this all fits together as a piece. And you could see him building to this slowly over the course of the film. And he is allowed to just revel in these pure, unadulterated images. That's what he wants to do. And I really got to watch 31, because maybe he is just that type of director that is doomed to always be thinking about his next project, as opposed to being able to fully focus on his current one.
That's what it felt like having seen 31. Before, of course, when no one had seen 31, you had no idea where he could have gone next, right? It's only in hindsight that you look at this film and see some of the inklings, especially near the end of 31. And of course, he's always going back to this music video thing. And when people say, like, it's just a Rob Zombie music video, or by the time the movie turns into a music video, or I didn't get the end because it was just a music video, it's just disjointed scenes that are there for shock factor, or because he could or always wanted. Maybe Sherry Moon Zombie said, I've always wanted to ride a goat. Just figure out a way that I can ride a goat, whatever. I learned how to mesh warp things in After Effects. I want to use it. That sort of stuff where you're throwing the kitchen sink into this kaleidoscopic music video thing of things that don't make any sense and don't have any reason and only last 3 minutes, so it doesn't really matter in a way what you're tossing in there for effect. because it is all for effect. It's not serving the storyline necessarily at all. Which, again, the book, I highly recommend for people who like this, especially if you're one of those people who are like, I love this movie except the end because it's a nonsensical music video. The book is for you because the book is written in a really approachable manner. There's a lot more left for you to imagine. There's a lot more to scribe because he has that, more to play with. There's a lot more to play with. He's writing it alongside an accomplished author. So it's very visually driven, even though it's a book. But the end makes so much more sense. The end is extremely satisfying in the book. And it is, it has that tinge of hopelessness like this does. Because that pile of bodies was, for all intents and purposes, a real pile of bodies.
When we're getting out of here in this film, the film pulls back on its trust in its audience, in my opinion. It's a little over-explained, in my opinion. I would have liked it a little bit more if we didn't have today's top story. All this murder and mayhem happened yesterday. Heidi hasn't, like, in an unrelated but related story, like the newscast is like saying every one of those women were part of the Salem's like historical society or something like that. And they're all of them just so happen to be direct descendants of when this town was founded in 1696. And then they go on to say, and also Heidi from this radio station was there, but her body was never found. She also, by the way, was a direct descendant of Reverend Hawthorne, who also lived in Salem, Massachusetts. Like, you went weird, and I'm wondering if he just felt like, oh, this is too weird. Or somebody whispered in his ear, and they said, hey, Rob, you want to, like, yeah, this is great. Like, you paint the screen like an artist, but can you put some fucking dialogue in any of these fucking scenes? No one's talked for the last 10 minutes. Like, no one knows what the fuck is going on. Can you just wrap it up during the credits? He's like, okay, I guess.
He's got that quiet whispered grandmother in his ear that's holding his arm going, Robert Bartlett Cummings, you just sit still and you behave yourself.
It's like, Robert, you shape up and fly right. You make this ending of this movie make sense. It's like, the rest of your family is out there and you are going to be a perfect little gentleman. And you're going to explain this movie in a concise way during the credits. Go.
Yeah.
So in a weird sense, I respect, and I still do respect, like, this is not like this ruins anything. I respect how weird this fucking movie is. I respect how artistic and impressionistic it is, how abstract he is in his sequences, but it's all of those moments where they pull back on it and just over-explain. Again, I'm convinced that the inclusion of Francis as a character at all is to just make sure that we understand the story in a way where I feel like if the movie came out in like the 1970s, they wouldn't have fucking bothered. They would have just made it, they would have left all of the explanations out, and you're meant to interpret it. You're meant to have the media literacy to be able to interpret what you're looking at. Not so in this, but again, it doesn't ruin anything. I still maintain that this is, again, I've not seen 31, but this still remains Rob Zombie's strongest work, front to back, in my opinion.
31 has its problems, I will say. I enjoy this the most as well out of all of his body of work. I really enjoy this as Sherry Moon Zombie's best piece as well. I think she acts amazingly in this. I really enjoy her character as well. And, like we'd said before, it's the fantasy life of the radio DJ type person. And I, aside from the drug use, think that this is an ideal fantasy life. Had I wanted to live an artsy sort of life, I would have this kick-ass apartment in a little artsy witchy town and be living this high life, and without the drugs, of course, that she is, with just, surrounded by tunes and art and artsy people. It sounds really good. However, fantastical. I'd love to. I really want to visit Salem to see if it has the same sort of vibe, because there were a lot of establishing shots and exteriors that were filmed there. Although most of it's on a stage, of course, but especially like the apartment number 5. But like, it does get the vibe of a small town, and I think that's the only thing I really like about that ending shot with. We start with all tomorrow's parties, and then shots of all her playing with her dog and stuff, and the radio broadcast, is that in a small town like that, it's not a doubt that there would be like, so-and-so was elected to city council. They're also a descendant of this person that was burnt at the stake. I think that probably does happen in Salem from time to time. Although if 30 people died that belonged to the Historical Society, I don't think everyone would be that privy to the fact that they were all descendants without a lot of research. And it doesn't sound like morning after 6 a.m. news headline research that should be done or could be done.
Yeah, unless one of the prerequisites of being in that society in the first place was you needed to be a descendant of it, which would then, but that also begs the question, why do you need to mention it then? If it goes without saying that if you're a member of this society, would you not by default be a bloodline that dates all the way back to the founding of the town? Who knows? Splitting hairs. I will say that some of those shots of Sherry Moon, like in her big fur coat, walking her dog like over the bridge and all that kind of stuff, and like it's fall, everything looks crisp, and you're like, say what you want about Rob Zombie, he knows how to fucking shoot a movie. Like, he knows how to make it look really cool, and those shots are beautiful, and there's tons of gorgeous shots in this film. But what do we got next for him?
Coming up next, we have Blood on Satan's Claw, and this is a first-time watch for both of us, although we've heard lots about it, seen lots of stills, seen lots of posters of it, and probably should have watched it by this point, but there's only so much time in a day and so many amazing films for us to watch. So yeah, Blood on Satan's Claw sounds like a really good follow-up to this sort of witchy film. Even though we've covered a lot of witchy films before, we can't get to them all, right?
Absolutely not. And if anyone is just like, I can't believe you haven't made time to watch Blood on Satan's Claw, well, guess what? You're in luck. We're making time for it absolutely next. So you can get off our backs already. Not that anyone was on our backs.
Another runner-up was Alucarda, which I really love. I love that film. But we'd have to discuss that one because it's quirky. It's a quirky film.
Just like we're quirky.
Oh, so quirky. What we need is some sweeps, bleeps, and creeps, as you say. It will up the quirkiness factor.
You know what? From now on, I just want a button that every time that I press it, it just goes meh.
Just you wait for Christmas. I've actually got the jingle bells, the Krampus bells from my dad. So I've got actual live sound effects that I can run for our Christmas episodes.
I'm Wes Knight.
And I'm Typical Lydia.
And you've been listening to Dead Air. If you like this show, you can find more episodes and other content on splatterpictures.net, Spotify, or wherever you download podcasts. We also upload all episodes to YouTube now, if you'd prefer to listen that way. You can find us across social media like Instagram, X, and TikTok, and the show is edited by Lydia Peaver and hosted by Lydia Peaver and me, Wes Knight. We'll see you next time.